The snow fell softly that Christmas Eve, covering the park bench where Thomas sat with his face buried in his hands. At 58 years old, he had built an empire from nothing. His company employed thousands. His name appeared in business magazines. But tonight, none of it mattered. The divorce papers had arrived that morning. 26 years of marriage, ending with a signature. His children, now grown, had chosen to spend Christmas with their mother and her new family. He understood. He didn't blame them. But understanding didn't make the emptiness hurt any less. Thomas had wandered to this small city park without thinking. Drawn by the lights of the Christmas tree some volunteers had decorated, he sat on the cold bench, snow gathering on his shoulders, and for the first time in decades, he let himself cry.
"Mister, why are you sad?"
The small voice startled him. He looked up to see a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, standing before him in a bright red coat and a green knitted hat. Her blonde curls peeked out from beneath the hat, and her blue eyes held genuine concern. She clutched a small wrapped present in her mittened hands. Thomas quickly wiped his face. "I'm all right, sweetheart. Just having a difficult evening?" The girl studied him with the unfiltered honesty only children possess. "You don't look all right. You look like my daddy did when Grandpa went to heaven." Something in her directness broke through his carefully constructed walls. "I suppose I am a bit like that," Thomas admitted quietly. "Sometimes grown-ups feel lonely too." On Christmas Eve, her voice carried such disbelief that Thomas almost smiled. Especially on Christmas Eve. The girl considered this seriously. Then her face brightened with sudden inspiration. "I know what you need. You can borrow my mom. She's really good at making people feel better. She makes the best hot chocolate, and she always knows when someone needs a hug." Before Thomas could respond, the girl had turned and called out, "Mama, come here. This mister needs help." A woman in a long green coat approached from the lamppost where she had been waiting. She was perhaps in her late 30s, with kind eyes that immediately assessed the situation without judgment. "Sophie, what have I told you about bothering strangers?" "But Mama, he's crying." "Nobody should cry on Christmas Eve. Remember what you always say? We help people who are hurting." The woman's expression softened as she looked at Thomas. Taking in his expensive coat dusted with snow, his red-rimmed eyes, and the profound sadness that surrounded him like a shadow. "I apologize," Thomas said, standing. "Your daughter's very sweet, but I'm fine, really." "No, you're not," Sophie insisted, with the stubborn certainty of childhood. "And that's okay. Mama says it's okay to not be okay sometimes." The woman smiled gently. "She's right, you know, on both counts." She extended her hand. "I'm Rebecca. And you've already met my daughter, the world's most determined helper." Thomas shook her hand, finding warmth in her grip that seemed to spread through his cold fingers. "Thomas and I should probably head home." "To an empty house?" Sophie asked with alarming perception. "That's even sadder." "Sophie," Rebecca began, but Thomas shook his head. "She's remarkably insightful for her age." "Yes, to an empty house." Rebecca exchanged a glance with her daughter, and something passed between them. The kind of silent communication that exists between people who have weathered storms together. "We were just about to get hot chocolate from the cafe across the street. Would you like to join us?" No pressure, but Sophie's right about one thing. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve if they don't want to be. Thomas hesitated. Every instinct told him to politely decline, to maintain the professional distance he had perfected over decades. But when he looked at Sophie's hopeful face and Rebecca's kind eyes, something in him crumbled. "I would like that very much." The small cafe glowed with warmth and the scent of cinnamon. They found a corner table, and Sophie immediately launched into an animated description of the present she had wrapped for her teacher. As Thomas listened, he realized he couldn't remember the last time someone had simply talked to him. Not at him, not to impress him, but just to share the simple joy of anticipation. Rebecca ordered 3 hot chocolates, and when they arrived, topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings, Sophie declared them perfect for sad hearts. "My daughter has appointed herself a healer of sorts," Rebecca explained with affectionate amusement. "Ever since my husband passed away 3 years ago, she's been very attuned to people who are grieving." "I'm so sorry," Thomas said, understanding dawning. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was.
Yes.
But we learned something important, didn't we, Sophie? Sadness gets smaller when you share it, Sophie recited, clearly repeating something she had been told many times. And happiness gets bigger. Thomas felt his throat tighten. That's very wise. For the next hour, they talked. Rebecca shared stories of rebuilding her life as a single mother, working as a nurse while raising Sophie. Thomas found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years, talking about the loneliness of success, the slow dissolution of his marriage, the regret of missing so many small moments while chasing bigger ones. You can't get time back, Rebecca said gently. But you can decide what to do with the time you have left. My husband taught me that. He was sick for a year before he died, and he spent every day making sure Sophie and I knew we were loved. Not with grand gestures, but with presence, with attention. With time, Sophie had fallen asleep against her mother's side, exhausted from excitement. Rebecca stroked her daughter's hair absently, and Thomas saw in that simple gesture all the love he had forgotten to show. I don't know what happens next, Thomas admitted. I've spent 30 years building a company, and I'm not sure I know how to build a life. Start small, Rebecca suggested. Start with tomorrow. Christmas Day. What would you want it to look like? Thomas thought about his empty house, the wrapped gifts he had bought for children who wouldn't be there to open them. Then he thought about presents, about time, about the profound gift this stranger and her daughter had given him tonight. I'd want to be around people who remind me what matters. I'd want to remember how to be present, Becca smiled. The shelter where I volunteer is serving Christmas dinner tomorrow. We always need help. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And everyone there understands about being lonely. I'd like that, Thomas said, surprised by how much he meant it, as they prepared to leave. Sophie woke enough to press her small wrapped present into Thomas's hands. This was for my teacher, but I think you need it more. You can give me a hug instead. That's a good present too. Thomas knelt down, and the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her carefully, this child who had seen his tears and offered her mother, who had reminded him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but connection. Thank you, Sophie. You've given me something much more valuable than anything I could find under a tree. What's that? She asked sleepily. Hope. Later, as he walked home through the falling snow, Thomas carefully unwrapped Sophie's gift. Inside was a simple ornament, a star made of popsicle sticks and glitter. With the words, "You are loved," written in a child's careful letters, Thomas held it gently. And for the second time that night, he cried. But these tears were different. They were the kind that came from feeling something again, from remembering that beneath all his titles and achievements, he was simply human, deserving of kindness, capable of connection. Tomorrow, he would help serve Christmas dinner. Next week, he would call his children and really listen. Next month, he would learn what it meant to build a life instead of just a legacy. But tonight, he would hold this handmade star and remember that sometimes salvation comes in the form of a little girl in a red coat who refuses to let strangers cry alone. And sometimes hope is simply someone saying, "You can borrow my mom. She's really good at making people feel better." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling us about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your day. Your stories inspire us to keep creating content that matters. Thank you for listening.